Hello and welcome back to the Ghostwriter channel, and in the welcome video I talked briefly about the importance of cutting words, and I said in a future video we would revisit that topic in more detail. So here we are. What is it about cutting words, and why is it a major mistake for most writers and even some ghostwriters? So if you're trying to write your own book, you want to pay special attention to this, because it is, again, one of the biggest mistakes among writers. You have to learn to write efficiently, and that means you must cut words. You see, the problem is that writers are often guilty of using too many words. And sometimes it's intentional because they think it sounds professional, but it could also be unintentional. And that's because the writer's just not thinking of better ways to say it. They write it down, they say, well, it's grammatically correct, so why should I change it? But the problem is, if you're making your writing wordy, it's expensive, especially if you're paying for a ghostwriter. If you're doing it on your own, you might think, well, I'm saving the money, but it's expensive for another reason, because your readers are going to miss the point. Now, in another video, I did talk about writing fast for the first draft or even subsequent drafts, and that's fine. And when you're doing that, yeah, you're probably going to find that it's a little wordy, and that's okay. Get your thoughts down, keep moving through it. But it's during the revision process that you must cut words. And that's why revising is so critically important. So remember, what does it mean when we talk about cutting unnecessary words? Well, if a word can be deleted without changing the sentence's meaning, cut it. Get rid of it. Extra words don't add information. All they do is they muddy up the message and make it more likely for your reader to miss the point. And if you're paying for a book, that's definitely something you don't want to do. So what are some tips for making your writing more efficient? Well, one is to understand the difference between the active and the passive voice. In the active voice, your subject acts upon the object. In the passive voice, it's just the opposite. The subject receives the action by the object. So if our sentence is, the quarterback passed the ball, we have the subject is the quarterback, passed is the verb, ball is the object. Quarterback passed the ball. That's 5 words. But if we wrote that in the passive voice, we might say, the ball was passed by the quarterback. See, now your subject is the ball being passed by the quarterback, but it's 7 words. So just by going to the active voice, we've gone from 7 words to 5, or a 28% reduction in words. That's big, and that's just for one sentence. Now, don't get me wrong and think that the passive voice is wrong. There are certainly some times that you can make a stronger point, or that it's going to be more fluid by using the passive voice. And in fact, some sentences almost require a passive voice. But for the most part, if you learn to write in the active voice, it's going to reduce your words. So that's a very big tip right there for cutting down your words. What else can you do? Get rid of wordy phrases. So things like, in the near future, just make it soon. At this point in time becomes now. In spite of the fact, make it although. During the course of, just say during. In regard to, just say regarding. In a situation where, you can make that when. In the event that, just make that if. Due to the fact that becomes because. Now, if you're paying attention in Word or other word processing softwares, you'll usually see that it will flag you for these. You'll get this little underline or a little squiggly line calling your attention to these wordy phrases. And you can just right mouse click on it and it will give you suggestions. But you've got to be watching for them. So once again, this is the way that a lot of people speak and that they write. Due to the fact that, just make it because. And so if you do that, you can start cutting down your words drastically. Here's another area, the unnecessary need to introduce. You see this a lot. You'll see a writer that will say something like, let me take a moment to show you why, and then they go on to explain something. Or, let me explain why that will happen, and then they go on. Or, I'd now like to share with you my top 5 reasons. Just state them, show them why, explain, list the 5 reasons. You don't need to preface it with an unnecessary introduction. Redundancies are another. I've talked about those in past videos. Here are some other examples. The car was blue in color. Well, blue is a color. Just get rid of it. Make the sentence, the car was blue. Here's another one. The following program is graphic in nature. Well, graphic describes the nature. Just get rid of it. The following program is graphic. And here's one that many of you might remember from a George Carlin stand-up skit. Police responded to an emergency situation. No, they haven't. They've responded to an emergency. It is a situation. Pretty much everything is a situation. You don't need to describe an emergency as being a situation. Just say, police responded to an emergency. Here's another use of redundancies. The fact of the matter is that it's time for a change. Well, you're already supposedly stating a fact. You don't need to say the fact of the matter. Even if it's your opinion, just get rid of the fact of the matter is that. Just say it's time for a change. It's much stronger when you get rid of the unnecessary words. So once you get rid of the unnecessary words, here's how powerful it can become. So here's an example. Let's say the paragraph reads, "The fact of the matter is that the words of the president were distressing in nature, and at this point in time, the CDC was called to respond to an emergency situation." That's 32 words. And once again, that's okay if you write it this way in your first draft or even subsequent ones. But when you get to the revision stage, you've got to pay attention. What can we cross out of here and not lose the message of the sentence? So after revising, we might come up with, "The president's words were distressing as the CDC was called to an emergency." Now it's only 13 words. We've gone from 32 to 13. That's a 59% reduction. So hopefully this helps you to see why it's so important to write efficiently. And to do that, you have to cut unnecessary words. Also, if you're working with a ghostwriter or perhaps looking for samples from several, take a look at this. See if they're writing efficiently. Pick a few sentences and see if there are words in there that you could easily cross out without losing the sentence's meaning. And if there are, they're not writing efficiently. So remember, if you're going to go about it on your own and write your own book, be sure you cut unnecessary words to make your writing more powerful. If you'd like to speak more about hiring a ghostwriter or even just helping with the edits, please call me at 561-282-9455. You can also email ghosthost@financeghostwriter.com.